So, Rick, you've been to AAPEX many times now. How many times you been?
As a shop owner, I think I went 8 times. As a trainer, I think I've been there, I think another 8 times.
Wow.
So,
Last time I went was
mhm.
last year, right? And that is an eye-opening experience. It is not like other trade shows. And we both go to a lot of trade shows. Tell me your perspective of that, because it's nothing like any other trade show on the planet.
The biggest thing for me when I went the first time, I must have had that local yokel kind of jaw drop. When you
Right?
see how many people are at that event.
It's crazy.
It is, I think, the biggest event in the world. If it's not, it's darn close.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess the biggest takeaway from me the first time was wasn't this little guy on an island. I was part of
Yeah.
something really, really big. That was the first takeaway.
Absolutely.
The second, as screwed up as I thought I was, when I started talking to some other people and realized they were as bad or worse than I was, uh,
Exactly.
it made me feel like, I guess it turned the dial down on my frustration and desperation, and made me realize there's a lot of other people in the same boat. It didn't change my desire to get somewhere else. It just
Right.
took the panic out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And my story. That's kind of where it started for me, right? Is that I went to ASTE and I saw that I wasn't alone. I saw other people were going through the same thing, and it took a while for me to kind of get over that panic and get through that fear and say, hey, this can work here. And seeing the way everybody else operates and seeing what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the transition piece, right? That was the gateway and the stepping stone to go to the next level. And I see AAPEX and I see, man, this trade show, it's massive. So you can see everything you could ever imagine as far as auto repair shops go. I mean, I've never seen a trade show
I
like that.
actually
And
challenge I
then,
actually challenge people to make the whole trade show, because between
yeah,
Apex, which is big, right? Apex
right.
is big, and now you got one on me. I haven't seen Joe's Garage yet.
Oh, man, it is
So not only
amazing.
do we have, you don't know this yet, but not only do we have Joe's Garage, right, where we're doing a class, which is
Right.
amazing. I love it. I'm love being back at I'm sorry, Apex again. Cut that part out.
Right.
So the fact that I love, going back to Apex again is such a big deal for us. But we have a booth this year.
Oh, that's
So we have a
fantastic.
booth for the time where people can stop in and talk to us during the day, as they're traveling through, and just sit down and talk. Talk to me about one of our Just One things. Talk to me about an issue you're having at the shop, whatever the case is, and I'll just listen. You want some advice? I'll give you some
Amen, buddy.
advice. So,
That's fantastic. So tell me about the class you're going to be teaching at AAPEX this year.
so the class that we're teaching is becoming a talent magnet. It is getting harder and harder to, how do I want to say it, get help the way we used to, right? The way it
Yeah.
used to be was we had this central area that everybody went when they were looking for help. We called that the classifieds back in my day, or
Right.
Indeed or ZipRecruiter today. The problem is that pool of talent is now a very small puddle. The truth is, the people that you're wanting to hire, don't tell yourself there's no good help out there. They're out there, but they're working for
Yep.
somebody else, and they're not actively looking for help. Doesn't mean it doesn't look. I mean, they're not looking for help. They're not actively looking for another place. It doesn't mean they're
Right.
not happy, right?
Yeah.
They could still be frustrated and challenged, but maybe they feel like they can't do any better. Maybe they feel like they've topped themselves out, so they're not looking. So now we're starting to explore more passive ways of getting in front of people, so that maybe we can pique some curiosity, right? Pique some
Well, and
curiosity.
absolutely.
What's that?
And you taught me this, right? Over the years, you've taught me, because I always looked and I said, hey, there's nobody in my area. There's nobody that fits this bill. There's nobody I feel comfortable with. And you kept saying, like, hey, stop looking right around you. Like, why are you looking right around you? There's a whole country, there's a whole world that you could pull people from. Why are you so focused on this certain mileage radius around you? And how much better of a place to find help than somewhere like AAPEX, right? There's technicians there that came there on their own dime, and they said, look, my owner won't pay to get me trained, or my shop owner will not pay to get me trained. They'll not pay to send me somewhere like AAPEX. And I see you as a shop owner here. You've got some of your team here. You're putting them through classes. You're investing in your team. Right. And so this is an opportunity to get out and be with those people. And you say, well, but if they're at AAPEX, they're probably not from around me. Well, who cares?
Who cares?
Right. Like, these are people who are looking for opportunity. They're looking for growth. They're looking for a career path. And location is not the primary focus of someone like that. And I was talking to Chris Messer the other day from Ratchet and Wrench, and he said, I think 15% of our industry total is participating in one form of training or another. And he said that may be the pizza party training after work. It could be going to a national event. It could be webinars, things like that. You go to these shows, and really the top 1% are at these shows, right? The best of the best are at these shows. So if that's the case, isn't that the talent pool you'd want to be coming for, or looking for, is the top 1% that's at a show at AAPEX, and having your face out there and being present at these shows and participating in these events? Man, I don't think there's a better way to start getting your name out in front of a potential technician or service
Absolutely.
advisor.
And this is kind of the stuff we go into in that class, the Talent Magnet, because from my perspective, and there's been some studies done, and we're going to go over those studies in the class. Basically, what it's all about now is showing up different, right? It's showing up in a way that connects better with your team, gives them better opportunities, makes them a part of the business. Not that they're partners, but that you're going to bring things to them that you're going to get their input on, and you're going to listen. And, sometimes you're going to listen and go, holy crap, that's a great idea. And you're going to take that advice. And it's all about creating an environment like a Google or an Apple where, when was the last time you saw a Google or Apple ad out for help wanted?
Right.
There isn't one, because they have people standing in line waiting to get into the job.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you now, it's not about foosball tables. It's not about beanbag chairs or anything like that. It's about the environment. It's about creating an environment. And I'm going to go into that really deep for you and show you specifically the areas you need to work on in your shop so that you can start to get people actually going, hey, man, I want to work here. Right?
Yep.
I want to work here.
Absolutely.
And the more you're out there, the better it is. Now, you being at AAPEX is a big, big deal, because they're going to see you and they're going to like, wow, he invests in his team. That's part of the environment. Yes. And wow, he really takes care of his guys. Look at it. They got their own rooms, everything like that. That's part of it. Holy crap. He's paying them while they're there.
Yeah.
Whoa,
paying them to train.
Right? Because most people don't realize it, but you're supposed to get paid for training.
Yeah, you are. And look, I think one of the biggest, most eye-opening things happened at ASTE just this last week, and I think it shows the value of going to an event like AAPEX, and that was that Jeff Compton, we've talked to Jeff, you've been on a podcast with Jeff in the past, and Jeff said, he came up and he shook my hand and he gave me this big hug and he said, thank you. And I said, why? He said, you changed my life. I said, how did I change your life? What did I do? He said, you made me come here. He said, I've been so jaded and so frustrated and so aggravated with this automotive repair industry, and I felt so attacked and I felt so underappreciated. And he said, I come to an event like this and I realize my shop is not the standard. This is the standard. And the work that's being done at a trade show like this is changing the industry. And I realize I'm not this one tiny cog in a wheel. I am part of something much
Huge.
bigger. I am part of a massive, massive movement. And so I think to take your technician to an event like AAPEX, where they see how big the industry is, they see that there are people actively working to make things better for technicians and service advisors and owners and clients alike. And they're working hard to make that happen. And you take them to an event like that and allow them to see it, they come back with a different purpose. They come back with vision. They come back with destination. And they understand that we're going somewhere. We're not just here working on a car. The purpose is not to fix the next car. The purpose is to be part of something much bigger. And that was so overwhelming for me, because I could see it in Jeff's face. I mean, he believed that and he knew that. He saw what I'd been talking about for years now. There's more to this, Jeff. There's more to this. You've got to see the big picture.
Yeah, he actually came up to me at the ASOG dinner and introduced himself and said, we talked for a while, and, he's like, I hope you're not mad at me and stuff. He's a great guy, and,
He really is.
he came in expecting, I think, a coach to be, against everything tech, and I think he was a little surprised,
Right.
so I thought that was really good. The other thing that's really
Absolutely.
cool about AAPEX is you get to see cutting edge technology. I mean, this is where
Yes.
the vendors, they pull all
Yes.
the strings out, man. They go full bore, and you get to see some pretty amazing things, so that it actually
Absolutely.
gives you a leg up on your competition in your area that are too narrow-sighted, right? Or
Yep.
too broke to take a trip like this. So that's a big deal. And the connections you'll make, believe it or not, I have
Man.
shop owners and parts vendors that I know literally around the world because
Yeah.
of my time at AAPEX.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those connections are so valuable, right? That person from halfway across the country, you've got a car that broke down and now you've got a connection that you can call somebody and say, "Hey, can you help us with this?" Or you need a part for a lift, and you met someone that is in the know with that particular company, and you can pick up the telephone and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And it is so powerful to have those connections. It really is. And I'm telling you, I think that so many people miss the fact, one of the big things that's being talked about right now is EV and ADAS, right? And so I think it is highly, highly misunderstood. And I think while the response is different, it's not feasible, it'll never happen, they won't actually do this. I think the problem with that mindset is they're not actually looking at what people are saying and what the people in the know are saying. So when you end up in an event like AAPEX, boys, you hear it from the horse's mouth. You hear the people who really do know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, what to plan for, what to project for. We were at an event the other day, and the man was a very, very intelligent individual standing up on stage, and he said, "Look, in 2050, 50% of the cars manufactured are going to be EV." And he said, "You're working on 12-year-old cars right now. This shift is not likely going to affect your business in a huge way in your lifetime, but you guys are focused on it like it's the end of the world. Relax a little bit."
Here's some perspective. When we went from points to electronic ignition, everybody thought the world was going to be over. When we went from carburetors to fuel injection, everybody thought the world was going to be over, right? I mean, you want to have a blast from the past, try looking at a 1977 Cadillac Seville with mechanical fuel injection. Okay?
Right.
There is so many different changes, and each time we adapt and we overcome. And it's no difference. The reality is we've got to step up our game. We've got to stop looking at it like we're just going to a job, and we got to start treating it like a career. There's a lot of different careers like doctors and, accountants, and they need certain continuing education units, CEUs, for them to maintain their licenses. I'm not recommending we license or not. That's not what this is about. What I'm talking about is continuing education. I'm going to tell you today, if you hired an A-Tech, somebody could just do everything, and you never send him to training, in 3 years, he's a B-minus tech.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just the way it is. if we're, because while you think, well, I'm just going to take a rest and I'm going to stay here for a little bit, but that's not what happens, and the life goes by. Like, life is flashing by. Technology is just going nuts. So exponentially, you're going backwards, right?
Absolutely. And, we interviewed Jerry Holcomb, the godfather of vision, when we were at Adapt. And Jerry said, I asked him, I said, is this different? Is there something different about this technology shift from what it was before? And he said, no. He said, this is the same thing we went through before. It doesn't feel any different. It doesn't look any different. He said, I'm going to tell you something. I'm still here. Right. And so he's been through some of those shifts. You've been through some of those shifts. It's not the end of the world. You just have to adapt and overcome. No. Right. It's not that big of a deal. And, Justin Allen is a really close friend of mine and David's as well. And so Justin, when we first became friends, we were talking about tire equipment and how we wanted to set the new shop up. And I was just visioning and brainstorming what the new shop was going to be. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, of all the things I've seen, from being service advisor to being a hunter rep, he said, I'm going to tell you the most important thing I can think of. And I said, what's that? And he said, listen. He said, every shop I go into, they say, hey, I don't want to do this TPMS stuff. That TPMS stuff is a pain in the butt. And he said, then they say, I'm not going to do those big wheels and tires, and I'm not going to do ADAS. And he said, time after time, they tell you of these things they're not going to do, to eventually the point that their market is so small, the client that they can service is so small, that they have to be working on things out of their wheelhouse because they didn't train for it, they didn't tool for it, they didn't prepare for it. And he said, that creates a liability image or liability issue. And he said, now I'm going to tell you something. He said, the difference being, he said, when I pull up in my hunter truck and that person is really worried about doing TPMS, and I can take them out and I can go in the back of that truck and I can say, here's a sensor, here's a wheel, here's a tire. Let me show you how to do it. Okay, now we're going to program that sensor. Here's how you do it. He said, all of a sudden, the blinders come off and it becomes really simple. It becomes easy to understand. It's clear that it is a investment we can get a return on. And Rick, I tell you, if you don't go to a show like AAPEX where you can see that happen and understand and kind of get a feel for it, I've had so many vendors on the show floor. I talked to the guys at Alltel last time I was there, and he said, no, you don't need to buy this piece of equipment, right? This is not a good fit for you right now. You need to do this instead. I could have spent $100,000 on something that wouldn't have been a good fit.
That would have killed you.
But because I had a face-to-face interaction, built a relationship, and got to talk to him about it, he was able to say, hey, no, I don't think that's the right thing for you right now. Let me show you what's better. Yeah. Right? It's not just about the dollar.
And you know something? When you see these vendors out there, engage them. Talk to them a little bit. Not every one of them is going to do the hard sell and the push and everything like that. Take a look at this stuff. And by the way, wear really comfortable shoes. AAPEX is big. SEMA is huge. I think SEMA's in the range of 10 or 20 miles worth of walking to get through all of SEMA.
I got through like 2 or 3 booths last year, or 2 or 3 sections last year. And I was like, I had a mission to go see certain people, and I didn't realize that was going to be 15 miles of walking. And so by the time I made it like through Shopware and Techmetric and all of our friends that we all see all the time, I'm like, okay, I can't do this. Let's go. I need to go eat dinner.
It's crazy.
Can't handle this anymore.
Crazy. We're really looking forward to being out there, and there's just so much good stuff out there. You got the training, you got the networking, you got the technology, right? And being on the cutting edge of technology, and listen to what people have to say, and then you can weigh it out and see if it kind of makes sense for what you're trying to do, or what you want to do. But the stuff's here to stay. I mean, like EV stuff, it ain't going away. Right?
No,
the only other technology we have right now that is possibly in the running is hydrogen, and that's got its own issues, right?
Yep.
So at this, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, it's just at this point, it really does look like EV's the way, and it's not perfect by any measure. I was talking to a shop in Maine. I was at Bimmer's last weekend, and I was talking to a shop in Maine that services Teslas, and they said in the wintertime, the range is cut in half. So instead of being 230 miles of range, they're doing 100 before the batteries need to be charged.
Holy
cow. Because of the temperatures.
Crazy.
So there's still some pretty significant hurdles we have to deal with
Right.
as far as the battery technology we're using right now. But if we're going that way, somebody will come up with something,
Yep.
right? They're going to come up with something that's going to deal with that issue. Because my
Right.
wife, I mean, you know, Brenda loves the thought of an
Oh,
EV
yeah.
vehicle.
Right.
But to
Right.
drive from Virginia to Massachusetts is
She have to stop 4 or 5 times.
for 45 minutes up to an hour and a half to 2 hours each one, depending upon the type of charger they have. It just doesn't make
Well,
sense yet.
look, as long as she's stopping at a mall and she gets your credit card, I don't think it's really a
First of
problem.
all, it's her credit card.
Let's clear that up right
I
now.
did something really stupid a little bit ago, and she looked at me and laughed, and she says, "I'm taking that out of your pay." And I went, "Okay." And then she starts rolling on the
Who
floor.
signs those checks?
Then I'm like, "What's so funny?" She goes, "I just realized I don't pay you." So, you know.
I can believe that. I don't even question it for half
So,
a second. I don't question it for half a
Yeah.
second. Well, and you know, I think it's important to point out, you know, I was doing an interview with someone yesterday and they said, do you believe that the emerging technologies are making it more difficult to repair automobiles? And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean no? And I said, I don't think they're making it more difficult to repair automobiles. I just don't think we're properly repairing
well,
automobiles.
we're not. Here's the thing. So much of our industry is still stuck with goober pile.
Right.
And you got to realize we're a lot closer to Geordie LaForge than we are goober
Right.
pile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, it's just like David always talks about. There's a Cadillac, I think it was 2007, 2008, that had a forward-facing radar or forward-facing camera for adaptive cruise control. And shops are putting water pumps on this Cadillac all day long, not realizing it's supposed to be recalibrated when it gets done. And so you need to understand that this technology, this is not emerging technology. This is current technology. This is what's being used right now. The cars you're going to see tomorrow, there's a chance it has this.
ADAS, if your mirrors light up when someone's next to you, it's got ADAS, right? There's different series of it or generations of it,
Right.
but it's been around for a long time. And you don't think it's a big deal until it's a big deal. Somebody gets in an accident, and all of a sudden you get this really money-hungry lawyer that starts doing some digging.
Yep. Yep. You know, we've talked about that over and over again, a proper documentation on the repair order. What did you touch? And you know, I think it was Ben Johnson from Mitchell we were talking to a while back, and he said, you've got to make sure you put what you calibrated, right? Not that you did an ADAS calibration. What component did you calibrate?
Yes.
Right? You've got to make sure it's documented. And this is a very serious issue. And so I was asked a couple times that have we seen these types of lawsuits yet? I'm sure they're out there. And Chris Chesney recently said, somebody was listening to a presentation he did, and they said, I'm pretty sure Chris Chesney was hinting at the fact that they know those cases are out there. He didn't name who they were, where they were, the time frame, but Chris is a pretty slick guy. He knows lots of people, so there's a good chance that Chris would say, hey, yeah, we've got some of these cases out here already. You know, we've seen the Eagle collision case. We've seen the case where the brake line blew out and they charged the technician with vehicular homicide and all these different things. Man, you can be in a world of mess really quickly and never even realize it's coming.
What about that Midas, I think it was, that got sued because they fixed the tire and then the brakes failed? That was a $12 million lawsuit.
Exactly.
And all they did was they did what they were asked to do. You got to understand there's an unspoken, if you were one of my clients, we'd be talking about unspoken expectations. Every client has them. One of them is that when you hand them the
seal
keys,
of approval.
It's your good housekeeping seal of approval that's saying it's safe to drive. So make sure you're actually doing that and at least alerting them to situations. And then again, let me give you an example. If you're looking at the steel brake lines and they go above the fuel tank, document that you've looked at the steel lines except for above the fuel tank because you'd have to pull the tank down. Document that because if something happens up above the tank, you're in a world of hurt.
Yep. I saw that just happen and it happened locally to me, and it has been multiple lawsuits, one of them well into the $7 million range. Right. And it was every bad thing that could happen combined at once, and somebody got really hurt over it. and they will never be the same. And you know, the owner of the shop, I think he feels worse about the fact that they missed it, they didn't get it. But the reality is this is going to affect the owner of the shop financially for the rest of his life, probably the rest of his children's life.
Yeah,
right? And so
is everything today. There is absolutely no reason not to have a very well documented ticket. If you think about it, it's the only thing your client's walking away with is that invoice.
I agree.
And you got to understand that invoice is a contract. And if something goes wrong and you've got to go to court, you are going to live or die based on what's on that invoice. I'll give you a real simple, quick example. I go into Lucas's shop with my vehicle, and I'm a pretty good customer. I'm a pain in the butt, but I'm a pretty good customer. He comes in, he says, "Oh, Rick, you got a headlight out. Let me throw one in for you." He wants to be a nice guy.
Right.
Next time 3 weeks later, I come in, I go, "Hey, Lucas, that headlight you put in's out." And it's the other side, but no one documented it.
Exactly.
Right? Always document. And don't document left front, right front, passenger front, driver's rear, passenger rear.
Absolutely.
So that people understand.
And without that documentation, you are, I mean, it is literally, you're just hanging out there hoping something doesn't happen, right? And you may not realize it. And I've noticed that with a lot of shop owners, they don't realize the liability that's present. And they'll say, "Hey, nothing's ever happened. I don't think it's that big of a deal, buddy," until it does happen.
Yeah,
right?
That's too late.
Until it does happen. Exactly.
That's too late.
Exactly.
I was talking to a shop owner last weekend that was putting client-supplied parts on the vehicle. He put a ball joint on the truck. Right. And I think it was 3,000 miles later, he saw that the guy called him up. He went out to look at it. The ball joint snapped.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So the guy's feeling bad. The owner's feeling terrible, right? So he finally says, "Well, where did you get the ball joint?" "eBay. $10 for 2 of them."
Holy cow.
Okay.
That's crazy.
That crap's out there. You can buy a set of hub bearings for a Dodge Caravan on Amazon, 2 of them with the ABS sensor for $70.
Right. That's crazy.
I wouldn't put those on my ex-wife's car.
I've heard how you talk about her. That's pretty bad, Rick. That's a pretty bad sign.
Yeah,
that's a pretty bad
if you want to swap ex-wife stories, just come on over. Although my wife is going to be with us. Lucas knows Brenda. Brenda's a sweetheart, and she's my forever wife.
She is.
We just celebrated 19 years together. So,
I told somebody the other day, we were talking about my wife, and I said, "You know why I don't do anything terribly stupid, right?" And they said, "No, why?" I said, "Because she won't divorce me. She'll kill me."
That's right.
I said, "If I ever go missing, you know what happened."
You know what happened was
right?
Lucas, he gets this carriage with a horse after they get married, and Alex is sitting there, and the horse won't move, and she looks at the horse, and she goes, "That's one." And then she gets the horse going, and all of a sudden it stops. She goes, "That's 2." And then finally the horse stops and he's eating some grass, and Alex just got out of the out of the back of the carriage. She pulls a gun out of her purse and blows the horse's brains out, right?
Right.
Lucas goes, "What the heck are you doing?" Alex goes, "That's one."
I have been close to one strike a time or two, maybe 10 times, maybe 50. I don't know, Rick. She does make my dinner, you know that, right?
I would have a professional taste tester, but that's you.
Hey, David, can you taste this for me? Everybody, Rick White. If you want to get a chance to have some of these conversations and you want to have a chance to dig in and begin to discuss some of the things we've talked about here, if you've got an issue with your business, if you've got something going on in your business and you really just don't have the answer to it, you don't know which direction to turn next, Rick White is a wonderful resource for you, and he will be at AAPEX, and he has offered to sit and have a chat with you. So make sure you get out to AAPEX in Las Vegas, and we will look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely. Joe's Garage, come see us. Thank you so much.